Ciao studente, mi chiamo Debra. Il mio progetto finale discute l'immigrazione degli italiani d'Italia per Isola Ellis e poi a Santiago. Si tratta personale di me, perché questa è la mia famiglia. Spero di piaccia. Grazie. The photo that you see on this page is my father's family, the Torontos, and the little boy right in the middle is my father. The picture that you see on this slide are my grandparents, Toronto, Ignazio, and Francesca. And it was really common back in the day, and I'm much older than most students, that people got married when they were really young, especially the women. So my grandmother, Francesca, was 13, and my grandfather, Ignazio, was in his 20s. La mia famiglia del mio padre è siciliano. La mia famiglia de mia madre es siciliano. What you see here is a picture of my grandmother Francesca's birth certificate. She was born in a city called Città del Mazzaro del Vaio, and this city is in Sicily, and it's on the water, and it's facing Africa. Isola Ellis, le Isola delle Creme. And La Isola de Creme means the island of tears. And as I will share with you in a little bit, this has to do with or is a relationship to the vast amount of discrimination against the Italians when they came over from Italy. In my research from 1880 to 1924, approximately 4.5 million Italians immigrated from the United States, and this was approximately 1/3 of the population of Italy at the time, and they say that that was about 1 in 50 Italian citizens who came on over. The majority of immigrants were from Sicily, but that is not to say that Italians from all cities in Italy came over to America, and they say that approximately 3/4 came through Ellis Island. The majority that came over were men, and they were between the ages of 24 to 45. Mia zia Lydia è arrivata a Ellis Island all'età di 2. And this is a picture of my Aunt Lydia, and she was 2 years old when she came over to Ellis Island. She came with my grandparents, Maria and Luigi Marino. They came with their oldest daughter, Ida. I also have my grandparents on my father's side who came over along with many great aunts and uncles. Questa è la barca che mia zia ha viaggiato. There were many reasons that the Italians immigrated over to the United States. They included the lack and quality of medical care in Italy at the time, the unemployment and underemployment for the citizens, also the schooling provided, hunger, and lastly, the class struggle that was going on at that time in Italy. When the Italians came over to Ellis Island, they were quarantined, and then they were sent into barges. They were asked to file into single lines, and then at that point they would go for a medical exam with a doctor or medical provider. During the exam, the doctors would determine what type of health they were in and would also determine if they weren't healthy, if they should be sent back to Italy. And this was quite upsetting for many because it broke up families. Some family members would stay in America and some would be sent back. On the next two slides, this is documentation where my great uncle came over on Ellis Island. His last name was Quincy, And this first page basically just shows some demographic information on my uncle, his name, his age, his birth and residency. This page shows that my grandfather was the sponsor for my uncle who came over, and this is also where the doctors made notations about any scars or moles that the immigrants may have or any type of disabilities. Sono venuto in Americano perché ho sentato le storie erano le stracate di loro. Quando sono arrivato qui, scoperto tre cose. In primo luogo, le strade non erano stracate di loro. Secondo loro, non erano le strade affatto. E la terra, ci si aspettava che. Most Italians, when they came to the U.S., were looking for work. And it is said that some Italians didn't want to deal with what was happening in Italy and didn't want to fix the problems, so came over to America to start a new life. But then there were others that felt that they were preserving the Italian lifestyle by coming over to America, working, and then sending money back to their families in Italy. On the slide, you notice that I mentioned the terms acelli di passo, and that means birds of passage, which what the immigrants were called at that time. Most of the Italians that came over were from Sicily, and many were from those who were low-wage earners or those who worked in the fishing industry or on the docks and were not educated. But that's not to say that there were many of Italians who were educated and came from central or northern Italy to immigrate as well, because the economy had hurt both type of economic classes in Italy. And it was interesting to find out that when Italians did come over to Ellis Island, this was the first time that the different classes of the Italians actually mingled and traveled together. And I, again, found that quite interesting. As I mentioned before, one of the reasons that the Italians came over was to send money back to their family. And the Italians were and are very proud people. And I found a quote from an Anita Frano that I thought was quite interesting. And as you can read, it says, El mondo me deve niente. Lo dobbiamo l'altra el mondo. And that was the philosophy that when the Italians came over, they did not want to take governmental assistance or government money. They came over here to work on their own, to earn a good wage, and do it all by themselves. Oranio delle sorte, perché gli italiani sono stati inferiori, saliti sono stati in grado di sopravvivere alla depressione e avere successo. Dopo 9 italiane sono state riprocessate e non trovato colpevole di aver ucciso a New Orleans il capo della polizia David Hennessy. Uno volo in ciascuno dalla prigione insieme ad altre 2 italiane che settero con la scusa di non collate e l'ha linciato. Ci sono state molte arresti di immigrati italiani in tutte le New Orleans e ondate di attacchi contro gli italiani negli Stati Uniti. So this was about the largest mass lynching in U.S. history, which happened back in 1891 and was the lynching of Italians led by the police officer by the name of David Hennessy. And this is the beginning of my research that I found very enlightening, and that was about the discrimination that the Italians received when they came over to America. You notice that I have there a quote from Teddy Roosevelt, and that quote basically is saying a rather good thing, and he was referring to the mass lynching and his feelings toward it. And of course, this was prior to Teddy Roosevelt being president. The Americans thought the Italians were second-class citizens. They did not like the fact that when they came over to America, they did not embrace the English language and continued to speak in Italian. They felt that Italy was the land of criminals. They felt that they were dirty and unkept and had bad habits and were lawless. On this slide are a few derogatory terms about Italians. WAPS, which is a reference to not having documentation, stands for without papers. And as a personal note, I remember being called that in the 70s. It wasn't as much as a derogatory meaning at that time. The second comment, Dagos. Abbiamo peccato per il giorno o andiamo. And this was an interesting find, and the story behind this term is that when the Italians got work when they came over to Ellis Island, their employers would put them to work, and then they would leave without paying the Italians. So the Italians said, well, you are going to pay us as we go. So each day they would be paid for the wages that they earned. The last term is Tony, and this one kind of caused some interest in me because many of my family members name are Tony or Anthony, and a lot of people when they came over, they were given incorrect names or their names were spelled incorrectly. And in this situation, what happened is many people who processed the Italians couldn't understand their names and saw that the tags on their luggage said T-O and Y, which was a reference to New York, and instead interpreted it to mean that their name was Tony. So I thought that was quite interesting. As I had made a similar earlier reference to crime and how Italians were believed to be criminals, we've all, I'm sure, heard the term mafia, which I don't know if you know what that means. Madre Padre Associazione Italiana, Mother and Father Italian Association. And then the rich Italians were called the Cosa Nostras. As a personal kind of note, I recall that when my brother married his wife, my sister-in-law, back in the early 1980s, her parents or family thought that because we were Italian that we were in the mafia. And this was right about the time that the popularity of the Godfather movies were playing in the theaters. So that's kind of a funny story. Molti italiani urlato nella ghiera. Many Italians felt offended because they were thought of being disloyal to the American culture, and this was even after they had enlisted and fought in the war for the United States. Americano ha ammesso alla discriminazione contro gli italiani. So this slide points to the House Resolution 244-2, and I believe it was first introduced into the Congress in 1999 and was later passed and signed by President Clinton in 2000. And this was when the U.S. recognized the discrimination from the past of the Italian culture and the Italians who came over in Ellis Island. And of course, this isn't to go without saying the other types of discrimination that occurred with other immigrants from other countries who came over, whether it was a Hispanic culture or those who came over from Poland. But I thought that this was an interesting find because I don't remember this occurring. Più le cose cambiano, più restano le stesse. And I typed this quote because it means the more things change, the more they stay the same. And to me, this is a reflection of discrimination of nationalities and what I learned in the past regarding the Italians and very similar situations that are occurring now, unfortunately. Mio nonno Toronto ha lavorato in una fabbrica Ford in Detroit. Il mio nonno Marino ha lavorato per la Veolia in Racine, Wisconsin. So both of my grandfathers worked with their hands. My grandfather Ignazio worked in the Ford factory, and my grandfather Marino worked on the railroad, which both were very popular occupations at the time. I did not get to meet them, so I didn't quite know why they moved over to San Diego and into the Little Italy community at the time. Comunità italiane sono cresciuti attraverso l'americana. So for those of you who may not be as familiar with Little Italy, now it's a vibrant community with wonderful restaurants and entertainment, and San Diego has really been building upon the downtown community. It was a lot different when my family moved to San Diego, and actually it's been quite different since I grew up there. Ho scoperto che gli italiani si trasferì in California, a San Diego, perché il clima era molto simile a quella della Sicilia. So they say through my research that approximately 6,000 Italian families set as their residence Little Italy in San Diego back in the day. And many lived in Little Italy and worked in the tuna fishing industry. La mia zia Aida, io zio Frank, i cugini avevano un panettiere italiano che ha consegnato il ristorante e i miei cugini ora posizionano il panificio. La Chiesa Cattolica, the Catholic Church. In San Diego, Our Lady of the Rosary is the Catholic Church associated with the Italian community in Little Italy. Personally, many aunts and uncles were married there, my parents included. Many cousins were baptized there as well. And what I had not made reference to in the past is another way that Americans discriminated against the Italians is because of their Catholic faith. At the time, America was largely Protestant, so did not agree with the Catholic faith. They felt that, in a sense, it seemed like a religion that was more having to deal with evil and rituals. Vi incoraggio a visitare la Nostra Signora del Rosario la prima domenica di ogni messa, mezzogiorno e in italiano. La industria della pesca del tonno. La industria della pesca è molto importante per mia famiglia. Questo è come la mia famiglia è stata in grado di fornire uno per l'altro. The fishing industry in San Diego, which at one point in time was considered the tuna capital of the world, um, started around the 1930s through the 1970s. And in my experience, it actually was very popular through the 1980s when my brothers and cousins fished as well. And San Diego was considered an ideal setting for a lot of Sicilians to come and fish because of the climate was considered very similar to Sicily. As I had mentioned, my family is very big into the fishing industry. My grandfather, my father, many uncles and cousins and my brothers were in the fishing industry. And there are many stories about this industry. And the photo that I previously shared started off with them fishing by poles and eventually grew into where you would go out and put fishing nets in the ocean, which would catch the tuna. But alongside catching the tuna, they would catch porpoise and sharks. So my brothers have many a tale of jumping into the nets and having to pull out the porpoise, and unfortunately having to pull out sharks as well. This was an industry that was very, very hard work, and personally, it prevented me from seeing a lot of my male family members. I can remember my brothers being out for months at a time fishing, depending upon where they would sail to. So only seeing them a couple weeks at a time. Also through my research, it was noted that the fishing industry did not pay well, but in my experience, the industry paid very well, where my family were able to support themselves and other family members. L'industria della pesca non è più a San Diego. I residenti in Italia si sono insegnati nuovi mestieri. Io e la barca, la barrietta, che i miei fratelli ha lavorato. Questa è una foto del mio fratello che si sedia sulla rete da pesca. Although my grandparents and parents and family really did embrace America, they still did live an Italian lifestyle. Some of the things I'd like to share with you about Italian lifestyle at the time where I grew up is spent a lot of time in the Catholic Church. Every Sunday, you went to church. You ate every dinner with your family, sitting down at a meal that lasted at least 2 hours. You spent at least every Sunday with your grandparents and aunts and uncles, and that was once a week was very infrequent. When my family made meals, they made meals for not just our own family, but for any person who may come over and visit, which was very unique for all of my friends and my brother's friends. They always knew they could come over and get food. I remember going to school and seeing my friends eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and being a little confused because my sandwich had provolone and capicola inside the bread, and I didn't use Italian bread. We actually used, we didn't use American bread, we used Italian bread instead. My friends would come over and see live squid or octopus sitting in our sink, and curious at all the different types of fish that we ate. Where most of my friends' families canned jam, my dad canned olives, and in our backyard there was numerous shelves of olives and wine and abalone shells. So it was a very different lifestyle that I grew up in. mia famiglia credo che tradizioni sono molto importanti. Siamo molto orgogliosi di essere italiana e vogliamo condividere con i nostri figli. Since we are doing our final project by Christmas, I thought I'd share some of the Italian traditions that I grew up with and that I have passed down to my children as well. And that is on Christmas Eve, we only eat fish and pasta. And that would include crab salad and pasta with split peas or pasta with broccoli. We would barbecue sausage at the stroke of midnight, and this was sausage that my family would hand make. On Christmas Day, that's where we had our meats, where we had some people call it brocioli, we called it brociolini, which is a meat roll, and where we would have homemade ravioli. And lastly, we would finish the night off with eating fresh sticks of anise and having castagni, which are chestnuts, and cannoli. Questa è una foto delle mie due figlie che fanno cannoli. In conclusion, I'd like to say that I enjoyed this project. I learned so much about the Italians immigrating to the U.S. and the discrimination that they endured, the work that they performed willingly to provide for themselves and their family, and how the Little Italy communities across the United States were formed to keep the Italian lifestyle intact. Spero vi sia piaciuta la mia presentazione. Mi è piaciuto conoscere l'immigrazione dei miei antenati e condividere la mia famiglia con te. Ciao ciao.